Hello. Welcome back, you guys. Thanks for being back, Anthony. We just couldn't get enough and wanted to continue this conversation. Blake, you have a good question for us to start out with.
Yeah. So one of the big things we were thinking about from our last conversation is that Anthony is one of the first beta testers for ChronoScape as it stands right now. And he's already gone through an interview session to recreate a specific memory and got some great feedback from him, both from a development standpoint and also from just a general user experience standpoint. And I was just kind of curious to ask Anthony some questions about his experiences in that and pull that thread a bit and see what he experienced going through that. So you want to just start off very high level and we can go from there.
Yeah, it was a pretty intense thread to start pulling, that's for sure. But it was it was not what I expected, and that's a good thing because it brought me back to the moment where I sustained my TBI, where it allowed me to explore the sights, the sounds, the smells of that environment. It was a lot more intense than I thought it would be, but that's also a good thing because it shows that it was authentic. And it shows that you were able to pull you back to a certain moment in time without the emotional baggage is too strong a term, but without the emotional adherence to that moment. And I think that's what's critical. And I would think that anybody that participates in this endeavor gets a new insight into not just the events of that day, but how to mitigate it and how to look at what you can do with it going forward. And I think that's what's critical here, because it's one thing to take a memory and go, okay, we're just going to isolate it, we're going to put it in a box, but you can't really do that. If you can take a memory and show why it's important, why it has value, and then assign a value to it, then you can figure out what to do with it down the road. So that's where I think Chronoscape has a great value, because it's able to pull you back to that moment, but also make it an experience that you can grow from and that you can use to help not only yourself but others.
Very interesting. So you said the word intense. And I kind of got stuck on that one only because I'm pretty sure I know what you're talking about, but I just kind of wanted to get some more insight into what aspect, I guess, would fall under that intensity category.
Yeah, and it's and it's and when I say intense, I say it in a positive frame, but
Yeah, yeah.
the going back to that specific moment in time, there's a part in your brain that wants to isolate it and not push it, not push it to the front. It's
Mhm.
part of your life, but it's not really important now, so put it back. But when you have to explore the specific instances, what was the scene like? What were other people doing? What were the emotions that were going through your mind? It adds the level of intensity that your brain wants to tell you, stay away from it, stay away from it, stay away from it. But you can't really get to a point of you're never going to get to pure healing, but to get to an advanced state of healing unless you address the scene and the emotion of the moment, all of those things. And I think that's where the intensity part of it comes in, because your brain has trained itself to mitigate. And when you're not allowed to do that because of the prompts, which were right on target, it forces you to explore it in a different way.
Hmm. That's right along the lines of what I was kind of guessing, because I've experienced it myself just going through the development of this. Because obviously, developing it yourself, you kind of have to go through it on your own and test it out. And having gone through some of my memories that clung on to me over the years, I can feel that same sort of like your brain starts screaming at you, like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Don't bring
Yeah.
that dirty thing in here.
Yeah.
We
Why
have
are
that
you
out in
going
the
down
garage.
this road? You can't go down this road. You got, we purposely kept you away from this. Why are you going down this road again? Yeah. And you can't do that.
Yeah. I think from what I experienced with it, it's that aversion to looking at the past because it's so sticky. It has so many components to it that are just like your brain wants to stay away from. That the reason the intensity word works is because just like an intense workout, the more intense your workouts are, sweat more in training, so you bleed less in war type concept. And I think that's really what I've kind of seen playing out as far as what ChronoEscape can do for people and can become, is this resiliency training component, a tool to take a deep look at your past objectively without it becoming something that just haunts you. And then that makes it easier to do the same thing in real time in the future.
Yeah, and I would agree with that, because you're wanting to find ways to not just isolate the memory, but to grow from it. And you're not going to grow from it unless you face it. And when you face it in real time with the platform that we have, you can't hide, and that's a good thing, because I think for far too long people have just been taking their memory and hiding it. They're not fully engaging with it. They're not realizing that it's a part of their lives. And my TBI, I know it's going to be a part of my life. It's not, they're not is going, it is. And there's some fun parts of it. When I get a shot in this arm, I feel it in this one, which is
Hmm.
totally bizarre to me. But and the doctors are like, "You do what?" But it's true, and I'm like, "Yeah," and they're like, "Wow, you're right." I'm like, "Because it's the brain is rewiring. The brain, when it rewires, it tries to isolate certain things, and it's the self protection mechanism." Yes. What Chronoscape does, I think, is takes you to a point where you need to address it, and then you address it, you get to a closer level of full healing, and I think that's what's important.
That's great. So one thing that has been hitting me recently, going through development as well, and talking to more beta testers about what their experiences are. I think one thing that I can see is I don't know, kind of a challenge, at least from getting across the value proposition of Chronoscape, is like the difference between a story versus a specific memory. And I think what you were saying about not being able to hide is very important from a memory standpoint versus a story, because a memory is a very specific thing that if you're asked the right questions, it's going to uncover whether or not you actually remember it, or whether or not, it's something solid in your memory. And if it's solid, there's a reason it's solid. And if it's not, then, maybe it's just some tangential thing that isn't actually a true part of the memory. But like, I don't know if, do you have any thoughts on like the difference between a memory and a story, like a broader story? It's kind of a broad question, but I think it's
Yeah,
helped
no,
me get insight.
I know where you're going here. It all gets back to authenticity. We can remember a bunch of different things, but how authentic are they? Did we actually hit that game winning shot that sent our team to the state championship? Or was that Bob? Memories get distorted over the years, so it's important that we have accurate reflections on what happens. And I think the Chronoscape platform allows it to have that accurate reflection of what's going on, and that is so critical, because if we're getting to a point where we're looking at moving on from the situation or growing from it, I think we have to be as accurate in the memory as we can. And then it becomes a true memory. It's not a story that we're telling ourselves. And you can tell a story and you can have an accurate memory. Both can be true, but you can also get to a point where it's not entirely accurate. And I think
Yeah.
Chronoscape helps to make sure that what we are telling ourselves is accurate, because of the way the questions are.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah, me too. That's a great delineation. Like don't tell yourself stories, understand the reality of the memories.
Right. And I think when you get to the reality of memory is where real healing ends. And when you do that, then you can start to move forward and away from areas that may cause you concern, may cause you problems. And And we're just talking about depression, all those things that come with a horrific memory like that. If you can find a way to take it from depression and apathy to positivity and empathy, then you can start to make real progress.
All right. So Anthony, like obviously when we started Chronoscape, the original thesis was creating a tool that would allow for a visual representation of your memory to be created. And obviously with Chronoscape as it stands right now in development phase, we're at the interview portion of that whole scale approach on recreating this memory. And so from kind of what you were saying, it sounds like we had this idea in our head of this full picture, this virtual reality goggles, you're going in and recreating memory. That's down the line. But for right now, what you're saying is there's healing, or there's something is happening at the interview phase. There's something valuable that comes out of that. And it's not just the visual representation. So I think I have my own theories about why that is and how that kind of develops in the brain. But I was curious to know what your thoughts were on that.
Yeah, I think the getting back to the point of the trauma is important. I think understanding why that has had an impact is important, because if you don't understand why the event happened, how it happened, the impact to you, then you're not going to get to a path where you're able to move forward. You're always stuck in that loop. And I think that if we are to grow from it, if we are to understand what the situation is, and then if we are to understand how to grow from it, I think we have to be able to say, this is my life, this is me, and this is a part of me. And, just like, what I had for dinner is a part of me. It's the same thing. And you can't divest yourself from a memory like that. You can only use it to advance the ball. Yes, this happened to me. What am I going to do about it? I can slink back into nothingness, or I can use it as a growth opportunity. And why not have a tool like Chronoscape to feed that growth opportunity that I think people are seeking right now? Because there are so many instances of TBI, not just in the military, but first responders and average citizens, that when you give them a tool that they've never had, there's that gee whiz factor initially. But then when you start to dig deeper, you look at, wow, this can really help me. This can not only help me, but it can help my family, my kids, my neighbors, my coworkers, and I can be a more active participant in society. Because I think one of the biggest drawbacks that people with TBI, and this is speaking from personal experience, we don't want to put ourselves out there, because
Broken syndrome.
what if, what if, you know, insert 100 things here. But when you get to a point where, like, why am I feeling that way? And then you move past that. These tools that Chronoscape has gives us an opportunity to move past that and to actually become a functioning member of society, which I think we all want to be, regardless of whether we have a TBI or PTSD or not. But there's a reason why we got our TBI, a reason why we had PTSD, because we elected to serve, and that doesn't go away. That desire to serve doesn't go away. It just gets rerouted in a different way.
Definitely agree with that. And it's like, as you were talking, it reminded me of the maxim, you can hide from reality, but you can't hide from the consequences of reality. And that kind of sums it up. Thank you for that, the good breakdown.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Happy to do it. The actual beta test, it was about an hour, but it was interesting because I wanted to see how deep it would go, and it went deeper than I thought, which is good. And because there's certain explorations of an incident like this from a human standpoint, a therapist may not want to go all the way. In this kind of a format, there's no barrier to progress. You want to see how far you can go, and if you get far enough, then you could actually get to a level that you may not have expected. And I think that's what happened with me. That led to the intensity comment that I mentioned earlier to Blake, because I was not expecting that, because I was expecting more of a guardrail, a human guardrail, and that's, but sometimes we get in our own way, and I think this doesn't let us do that. It lets us truly address the situation that led to the TBI or led to the PSD event. And that is, you want to have all the information you need to get to the healing that you deserve. It doesn't be too strong a word, but get to the healing that needs to be need. Yeah, I would say that, I was drained, and part of what my medical team tells me is, when your brain says sit your butt down, sit your butt down. And that's what I had to do. I had a list of tasks that I needed to get done, and that wasn't going to happen. And then in the late afternoon, I started to feel a little bit better. And then I tried one, and your brain was like, I told you to sit your butt down. Don't do that. And I'm like, all right. I punted it all till the next day, but that's good though.
Yeah, I think from a technical standpoint, and how it's working on the back end standpoint, it's kind of how I thought about it is, the normal journaling process for therapy modality, just write it out in a journal and then come back and then you'll talk about it with your therapist. The interview process for Chronoscape now, as it stands, is a technological advancement of that same journaling process, because rather than just going through your own heart and head of what happened in that memory and writing it down and trying to grind through it and coming up with maybe 60, 70, 80% complete. When Anthony, you're talking about not being able to hide, that's how the prompt, the agent that's doing the interview, is built. Every open thread is like, oh, you have an open thread over here, I'm going to ask you questions about that now. So it's like any context you give it is just going to open up another can of worms. And I think that's probably where that exhaustion kind of comes from, because you're being forced to pull from neurons that have been lazy for decades, and you're poking at them now so they get up and move.
Yeah, and even now looking back on it, it was a great thing to do, because it allowed you to not just explore the situation, but to say, okay, this is where I was 6+ years ago. This is where I am today. It allows you to make a comparative. It allows you to go, wow, look how far I've come. But it also said, look how far I have to go. And I think a lot of times people with TBI, and I'm speaking specifically to me, and not to everybody else in the bucket, but I think sometimes, well, what more is there that we can grow from? What can we improve? You get to a point sometimes where, like, okay, well, this is the best it's going to be. No, uh, you go back to, uh, for lack of a better word, the origin story, and then you can see where you are today, and then you're like, okay, what if I go here? What if I go there? It creates an opportunity for growth that had I not taken the test, I don't think it would have had that window been opened. And I think that's an important point, because a lot of people that have TBI, a lot of people that have PTSD, they've had all kinds of different ways to isolate it, mitigate, grow from it, blah blah. Yeah, but I think this is a unique platform that gives you a chance to go, okay, those are great things that I've done, and not to disparage any therapist or any medical team folks, or their simple conversations, but this is a new tool that I can have in my toolbox. And I think that's the value, that if we can get to a better position to grow from and get to a closer level of healing, and I think we'll be there.
That as you were talking, that gave me a great analogy in my head of the the full picture of someone as a boat, like your origin story. That boat got created along the way, it got dinged up and, punctures and, pokes in it here and there. And if you don't take the time to go back and patch those up, you're not going to be able to continue to move forward as efficiently as you could have.
Right.
Yep. Yep. And something I always forget, or even now, is the good memories too, as a full package, because those are equally, if not more important. And that's going to be a fun research question that we'll dive down, but it's going to be an interesting one.
I think the uniqueness of the idea. There's all bunch of therapy programs out, but what really works and what connected me was when Blake and other we had this conversation about military suicide, and and I'm looking at it, we say one if one person says no, I'm not going to do that, then it's a win that is more important than anything else. And we're never going to know who that person is or how many of those people there are, but we know that there will be those people who said, "No, I'm going to live for tomorrow," and that's very attractive. And when you have a TBI, you're looking for avenues to both raise awareness that people with TBI can be functional members of society, but you're also looking for ways that you can you can give back. And I think the whole uh, genesis of ChronoScape built on that. It's built on how can we continue to serve a nation, a society that we've served all our life, and this is just another path to do that.
Oh, it's excellent. Yeah. So the origin story for ChronoScape, it was originally through working with Donovan Martin, who's one of our board members from the psychology standpoint, advising us on psychology in general. And so I met him originally through my wife. My wife's a neuropsychologist here in Fort Wayne, and that's how they met. And Donovan was running a program where they would take kids from his practice that had behavioral issues out in the woods, and I'd go out there with them, and I would be the field guide, Donovan would be the psychologist, and we'd bounce the kids off of each other, and it worked out great. In those long conversations out in the woods with Donovan, he was learning a lot from me because he was interested in like the special operations psyche persona. We talked a lot about that, and he gave me a lot of insights around why we act the way that we do, and it definitely opened my eyes to some things. But through that, one conversation that we had was about just traumatic memories and what they normally do in as a modality is just having them journal it out and discuss, this happened here, well that couldn't have happened over here because you said this right here, and that gets into that objectivity concept. Fast forward a few years and I started getting into AI, and I realized that the technology was to the point where a voice to 3D representation was possible. It's technically feasible, and it is technically feasible right now, and that's what we're working on. Yeah, once I thought through that, I realized the implications of being able to recreate your own memory and to revisit it and to look at it and to use that as your journal in a way, and to reflect like, well, this couldn't be the case because this is over here, and I don't need someone else guiding me along just to get to that point. But now playing it out 3 years down the line and having 6 months of development under our belt, all of that still holds true. And I think we're seeing a lot more just in this conversation, some of the things that the mechanism. And Anthony, when you were talking about the suicide rate, it reminded, because I'd spent time working at the Green Beret Foundation, and I saw and experienced all that firsthand when you get the email like, hey, someone else either got killed in combat or someone else just, killed themselves. And so it's almost a never ending stream, it feels like. And, the stop veteran suicide is a statement, but what's the mechanism underneath it? And I think that's a piece of the puzzle that a lot of people don't have readily handy, like, because they haven't done the thinking on like what that cycle looks like. But the more I've gone through the development of Chronoscape, the better I've understood what that cycle looks like and why it's so destructive, and why Chronoscape as a tool interjects in the middle of that, and it has the potential to short circuit that cycle, because that intensity concept is forcing you to work on your psychological fitness.
It really is. The psychological fitness is so important. It's like being in the gym. It's like, how are you going to handle that quiet final 5 minutes before you go to sleep? Because that's where all those negative ideas, I don't say all of them, but most of them pop into your head, because you're in that quiet space. You're about to fall off to sleep, and you're like, "Ah, ah, ah." It becomes a tough challenge. If you can use a tool like what Chronoscape provides, you can look at ways to go, those those ideas aren't going to get me today, and they're not going to get me tomorrow. And I know that you see it with all the work that you've done, Blake. Just the real need that's out there to take care of these folks that took care of us.
You just created an entirely new research wing. Because I know we're gonna be going into dream recreation too in Chronoscape. I'm excited about that one, because that's gonna be great. Watch that. Yeah, we'll have to talk more about that sometime. Cool. Yeah, I've done, just so you know, I've gone through not Eve, but Iris, doing the same interview process on like my top 10 dreams that had a deep impact in my life, and that was very exhausting. I put off the worst ones until the very end because they were not fun. No, that's great.
Yeah. I think those are two good pillars to build off of, no matter what the audience is. If you have those, you can make a good start on anything that you're after.
Awesome.